What if I told you that the greatest threat to the world's most powerful intelligence agency wasn't a foreign government, but a 25-year-old man living in his parents' basement? A man they considered a nobody, a ghost in the system they didn't even know existed until it was too late. This isn't just a story about hacking. It's a story about what happens when you push a quiet mind past its breaking point. It's about the digital war none of us see, and the one man who decided to fight back. Not for money, not for fame, but for revenge. If you want to hear stories that will make your blood run cold, make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and share this with a friend who loves a good mystery. And in the comments, tell me, what do you think happened to him in the end? Now, let's begin the story. His name was Ethan Holloway, and for 25 years he was a ghost, even to himself. He lived in a rented room above a disused garage in a town called Bakersfield, a sun-bleached stretch of California that the American dream had long since abandoned. To the world, Ethan was a statistic, unemployed, a high school dropout, a shadow that moved from his bed to a worn-out desk cluttered with empty energy drink cans and 3 monitor screens that cast a perpetual, ghostly blue light onto his gaunt face. His only window looked out onto a cracked parking lot, but the windows he truly lived behind were digital. Ethan wasn't just a hacker, he was an artist of the unseen, a cartographer of the world's hidden vulnerabilities. While other kids his age were building careers and relationships, Ethan was building a labyrinth in his mind, a map of every firewall, every back door, every flaw in the digital fortresses that held the modern world together. He could slip through the security of a multinational bank before breakfast and dismantle a city's power grid schematic by lunch. He was, by any measure, a genius, a forgotten, angry, invisible genius. His anger was a slow-burning fuse lit years ago. His father, a veteran who had served his country with quiet dignity, had fallen ill, a rare condition, the doctor said, linked to exposure to something during his deployment. The government, the very entity his father had sworn to protect, denied the claim. The paperwork was a labyrinth, the appeals a cruel joke. Ethan watched his father, a man who had once seemed as immovable as the Sierra Nevada mountains, shrink into a shell of himself, defeated not by an enemy soldier, but by a faceless bureaucracy. The day his father passed away, alone in a sterile VA hospital room, the fuse in Ethan Holloway burned down to its final millimeter. He didn't cry. He simply sat down at his desk, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. The target was no longer a challenge for sport. It was no longer a test of skill. The target was the United States government and its most formidable digital guardian, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He didn't want money. He didn't want to expose secrets for fame. He wanted to make them feel what his father felt, helpless, small, watched for 6 months. Ethan planned. He didn't sleep more than 3 hours a night. He lived on cheap pizza and a singular, terrifying focus. He knew that attacking the FBI's main network was suicide. It was like trying to break into Fort Knox with a pocket knife. So, he didn't try. He went for the plumbing. His first target was a small, underfunded municipal water treatment plant in a town outside of Phoenix, Arizona. He found their system an outdated SCADA network protected by a default password. It was laughable. He didn't tamper with the water. He wasn't a monster. Instead, he used it. He installed a dormant piece of code, a digital sleeper agent, deep within their servers. It was a foothold. From there, he leapfrogged to a regional power grid operator in Nevada, using a phishing email so expertly crafted it fooled a system administrator with 20 years of experience. Each new server he compromised wasn't a target. It was a stepping stone, a node in a decentralized ghost network he was building. He called it Project Leviathan. He knew the FBI's cyber division, a unit based out of their field office in Washington, D.C., operated with a certain arrogance. They looked outward for threats: China, Russia, North Korea. They never looked for a ghost in their own backyard, a phantom moving through the infrastructure they considered beneath them. The final stage of his plan was elegant in its cruelty. He didn't steal files. He didn't deface their website. He found their procurement system, the mundane digital marketplace where the FBI bought everything from office chairs to server blades. With the access he'd gathered from the water plant and power grid, he'd found a route in. It was a vulnerability in a third-party vendor's software, a backdoor that connected directly to the FBI's internal purchasing network, a door left unlocked by corporate negligence. On a Tuesday night at 3:14 a.m., Ethan initiated his attack. He didn't use a single command. He used a symphony of them. From his room in Bakersfield, he triggered the sleeper agents he'd planted across 3 states. The water treatment plant in Arizona suddenly reported a catastrophic system failure, its automated alarms flooding the local emergency services with false data. Simultaneously, a substation in Nevada went offline, plunging a small residential area into darkness. These were distractions, but more importantly, they were a test. He watched the traffic. As first responders scrambled, the FBI's internal systems linked to federal threat networks began to register these anomalies. Their automated threat detection, designed to spot large-scale coordinated attacks, lit up like a Christmas tree. The focus of their cyber division shifted to the critical infrastructure attacks in Arizona and Nevada. Their eyes were on the bright, noisy explosions he'd set off on the periphery. And in that moment of chaos, Ethan slipped in through the back door. He moved with a predator's patience. He was in their procurement network, a vast digital archive of purchase orders, budgets, and internal communications. He bypassed their internal firewalls using a zero-day exploit, a flaw no one in the world had ever discovered, that he'd found buried in a legacy code from a 2012 software update. He was no longer a visitor. He was a janitor with a master key, moving silently through the halls of their most sensitive digital spaces. He didn't go for the obvious. No classified case files. No witness protection lists. He went for the human element. He found the email servers for the field office in D.C. He found the correspondence of Assistant Director Robert Kellerman, the man in charge of the very unit that had denied his father's claim. For 3 hours, he sat in the dark, his face illuminated by the cascading green text on his screen, and he watched. He watched their secrets spill out in mundane emails. He saw the arrogance, the petty power struggles, the casual conversations about people's lives as if they were chess pieces. He found the internal audit reports that had recommended changes to the veterans' claims process that were cost prohibitive. Then he struck. He didn't crash their systems. That would have been merciful. He didn't leak everything to the public. That would have been chaos. What he did was surgical. He extracted a specific set of data, the personal financial records, private emails, and classified communications of Assistant Director Kellerman and 4 other senior officials. He then crafted a single meticulously detailed email. It contained a summary of their corruption, their negligence, and their callousness, backed by the very data he's stolen. He sent this email to every single employee in the FBI's Washington, D.C. field office, from the most senior analyst to the newbie receptionist. At 6 a.m., as they were just starting their morning coffee, their inboxes chimed with the undoing of their leadership. The subject line read, "From the ghost you created." Panic didn't begin to describe it. The FBI's own internal network had been weaponized against it. Their most sensitive internal communications were being read by their own junior staff. The email contained a link, a dead link that led nowhere. But the psychological impact was nuclear. For a few hours, the FBI wasn't investigating crime. It was the victim of a crime so profound, so humiliating, that its very foundation seemed to shake. Ethan watched the digital fireworks from his room. He saw the frantic security protocols activate, the servers being locked down, the digital equivalent of a SWAT team scrambling to find a ghost. He saw them trace the attack back through his network of compromised nodes, the water plant, the power grid, and he watched them hit dead end after dead end. They were chasing shadows he'd left for them. He leaned back, the glow of the screen reflecting in his tired eyes. A small, cold smile touched his lips. It was done. He'd made them bleed. But Ethan Holloway was too smart to believe it was over. He knew they would find him. Not today, not tomorrow, but they would trace the digital breadcrumbs back to his room in Bakersfield. He had maybe 12 hours before a real-world SWAT team would be kicking down his door. He'd made peace with that. This was a one-way mission. He reached for a final flash drive, a small, unmarked piece of black plastic. It contained the master key, every piece of evidence, every backdoor, every exploit he'd used, meticulously documented. He was going to leave it on his desk for them, a calling card, a final checkmate. He stood up, his joints cracking from hours of stillness. He looked around the room, the empty cans, the peeling wallpaper, the single window showing the first pale light of dawn over Bakersfield. This was the end. He walked to the window to take one last breath of cool morning air. He opened it, the rusty frame groaning in protest. He leaned out, looking at the empty street below. That's when he saw it. A black SUV, no markings, with dark-tinted windows, was parked at the far end of the street. It hadn't been there an hour ago. His blood ran cold. They were faster than he thought. He spun back to his desk, his mind racing. No, this wasn't the FBI. They would come with sirens, with helicopters, with overwhelming force. This was different. This was quiet. This was someone else. A soft knock came from his door. Not a forceful pound, but 3 polite, deliberate knocks. Ethan froze. His eyes darted to the flash drive on his desk, then to the monitors, still showing the quiet, post-attack digital landscape. He was out of time. He didn't move. He barely breathed. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then, a voice from the other side of the door. It was calm, professional, with a faint accent he couldn't place. "Ethan Holloway, we're not here to arrest you. We're here to offer you a job." A job? He glanced back at his screens, at the chaos he'd just unleashed on one of the most powerful agencies on Earth. This made no sense. "We've been watching you for a long time," the voice continued, muffled by the wood. "Your skills are exceptional. Your father's situation was a tragedy, a failure of the system. We represent an organization that believes in alternative solutions. We can give you what they never could: purpose, resources, and a way out of this room." Ethan's eyes scanned his monitors again. He saw the FBI's cyber division had traced a piece of his code back to a server in Romania. A false flag he'd set up months ago. They were chasing it, their digital dogs following the wrong scent. He had more time. But this was something else entirely. He slowly walked to the door, his hand hovering over the flimsy lock. He looked through the peephole. 2 people stood there, a man and a woman. They wore dark, impeccably tailored suits. They didn't look like government agents. They looked like ghosts themselves. The woman was looking not at the door, but directly at the peephole, as if she could see him through it. She smiled, a thin, knowing smile. "Open the door, Ethan," she said. "Let's talk about your future." His heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't in any of his plans. This wasn't the FBI. But who were they? Private sector? Another government agency? Or something else entirely? He looked back at the flash drive on his desk, the culmination of his revenge. Then he looked at the door, the threshold between his old life and something unknown. He reached out and unlocked the door. The story you've just heard, it's the official, sanitized version that was leaked to a journalist from a source inside the Department of Justice 3 years later. The FBI never officially acknowledged the breach. The assistant director, Robert Kellerman, quietly resigned, citing personal reasons. A handful of reforms were made to the veterans' claims process, but no one ever connected them to the event. As for Ethan Holloway, his room in Bakersfield was found empty. The next day, the 3 monitors were still on. The empty energy drinks were still there. And on the desk, that final flash drive was left behind. But when the FBI's technical team analyzed it, they found it was blank, completely wiped. The door was unlocked, the window was open. There were no signs of a struggle. Security footage from a gas station across the street showed a black SUV with no license plates pulling away just after 6:30 a.m. The driver's face was obscured by the glare of the rising sun, and the man in the back seat, who for a brief moment turned to look out the window as the SUV passed under a streetlight. The footage was too grainy to make a positive identification, but the FBI analyst who first reviewed it noted something in the report, a single sentence, buried on page 47 of the case file, which was later classified and sealed. It read, "The passenger in the rear appeared calm. He was not restrained. He appeared to be looking directly at the camera, and he was smiling Ethan Holloway was never seen again. No body was found. No new digital footprints surfaced. He simply vanished, like a ghost who had completed his unfinished business and moved on. But sometimes late at night, when the internet seems just a little too quiet, or a minor glitch causes a government server to hesitate for a fraction of a second longer than it should, a few people in certain agencies still wonder. They wonder if Project Leviathan was merely dismantled, or if it was just the first small wave sent to test the walls before something much larger finally decides to rise from the deep. And they wonder about the 25-year-old ghost from Bakersfield. Did he escape to a new life? Or was he recruited by a force even darker and more powerful than the one he sought to destroy? The only clue that remains is a single line of code, a digital watermark that has never been fully deciphered. It appears in the most unexpected places: a decommissioned satellite's final transmission, a server error log at the Pentagon, the boot-up sequence of a prototype AI. It translates to a simple phrase, repeating over and over in a loop that has no end. The ghost is not gone. He is just choosing his next target.